Hey everyone, it's Rachel from T-Hawk Studio, and today it's another episode of T-Hawk's Two Cents. I'm going to show you guys a little bit about fire today because that's always kind of fun, but it's also something that's really important when you're metalsmithing. You have to learn how to be comfortable with a flame. And today I just kind of want to talk to you about using the right torch tip for what you got going on. There are all different kinds of torches out there. There are acetylene torches, propane torches, butane torches, and they all have their pros and cons. I personally use an acetylene torch, and the reason why I do that is because it's what I learned on. I've used other torches in the past, and this one just works really well for me. Once you learn how to control it, you actually have a lot more options available to you as far as what you can do with your solder torch. So, and you use this torch for everything. You anneal, so you make your metal softer, you solder with it. There's all sorts of things you can do. Reticulate silver. And basically what I wanted to show you today is torches like this come with all different sizes of torch tips. As you can see, they kind of get bigger as you go, depending on what type of flame you need or what type of project you're working on. The smaller type of project that you're working on, say like a jump ring, you're going to want to use the smallest tip that you have available to you if you're using this Smith torch tip. And I think this one's like a double aught, so it's really small. The flame, you can barely see it. I'll show you guys real quick what that flame looks like. So to change out tips, you just put your tip on and then you tighten it down. You don't want to tighten it so tight that it's really hard to get off. There's gaskets and stuff in here that keep things from being like that. So if you look, this is the torch tip that you would use, or the flame you would use to do something really small, say like a jump ring. So say you're doing something just a little bit larger, like an earring bezel, or you're putting a post on the back of an earring, or it's just a small, thin type of metal, you're going to want to use your just regular aught tip. And this is what this looks like. As you can see, that's a bigger tip, but you also have more control. So you can turn that flame down or you can turn it up too. So there is some control as far as how much flame you get with this Smith torch. Now, say you're doing something bigger, like you're getting ready to solder your bezel to a back plate. You're going to want a tip that gives you a lot more heat because you want the whole piece to come to temperature kind of at the same time. You don't want one area cold and one area hot. So if you're not heating your piece evenly, it's going to be very difficult to get that solder to flow all in one go. So this is what a number one tip looks like. And again, you can turn it up, you can turn it down. If you start hearing this sound, you've got a little too much oxygen going in there, and so it can oxidize your piece, which makes it harder for the solder to flow. Now, if you're annealing a really large piece, say like an 18 gauge, 3 by 3 inch piece, and you need a really big flame, you've got this option available to you. And this is a big sucker. It can heat stuff up really quickly. And so that's why I like this torch, is it just gives you a lot of options. The reason I really like this torch is if you see these little holes right here, there's a bunch of little holes that go around. The reason those are there is because it mixes the proper amount of oxygen with your gas, the acetylene, and so it takes the guesswork out. With like a propane torch, you can manually adjust your oxygen to your acetylene ratio, which can be helpful in certain instances. But if you can get control of this torch and you can learn it, it's really pretty easy. There are some setbacks to using acetylene. It's a little bit harder to get. It's a little bit more expensive than maybe like a propane. You can go pick propane up at the mini mart if you run out on a Sunday afternoon. With acetylene, you do have to go through a gas supplier, and so just sometimes it's maybe a little less convenient if you let your tank get really low. Also, there are studies out there that show that acetylene, you can light acetylene at a huge range of gas mixtures, whereas propane, there's a smaller range of gas mixtures, and so where it's flammable, and so they say that propane's a little bit more safe, but I have never run into any issues with the acetylene, and that's because I check periodically. I check my my hose that goes to the acetylene tank. When I'm attaching a new bottle, I make sure to always take and open it up, spray that thing down with soapy water to make sure there's no leaks. Just make sure that everything is proper. So as long as you're taking the proper safety precautions, you should be able to use an acetylene torch with, little to no problem. There is a little bit more of a learning curve, but you have a larger range of pieces that you can solder and anneal with a torch like this. It's a little bit, for me at least, more versatile, especially if you're working like I do, and sometimes you're working on really tiny projects and sometimes you're working on really large projects. And so that's kind of why I go with the acetylene. If you guys have any other questions about torch tips or what they do or different types of torches, give me a message and I'll send you some links to some reading material. But I hope that you guys found this a little bit helpful if you're just starting. And I will see you next Thursday for another episode of T-Hawk's 2 Cents.